Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of Curriculum of Fear, the series in which I examine various interesting educational philosophies that will all lead us towards a more equitable, perfect, and just future. Did that sound professional? Because I just did that off the cuff. It must be all this practice I'm getting over the years, but yes, once again, into the breach. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all having a good Sunday morning. Hope you are all safe and well and warm. I've just recently woken up myself, so if I sound a little groggy, that might be why. But before we get into the wonderful world of our subject today, hello to some of you who have joined me this morning. Richo8181, Raziel, Somnamnul Nation, No Name, Debatefly, Mike R, Check Your Logic, Mike Savage, Blarg, You're Ridiculous Lunatic, Check Your Logic, if I didn't already say that, and Killer Turnus. Hello to you all. I hope you're all doing well. So, first off, many thanks to Massive Dynamics for finding this. The other night on Lords of the Night, an article came our way, and Satsu was reading it, that said that there was a organization, unnamed, on a website, a link not given, that was being supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who promoted the premise that showing your work in mathematics is inherently racist in some way, shape, or form. The article, such as it was very light on detail, obviously, because, again, it did not name the organization or give a link to the website in question. So to the best of my knowledge, and again, thanks to Massive Dynamics, this is the organization, the philosophy, whatever you want to call it, because down at the very bottom, we also wish to thank the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for their generous financial support of this project. So, unless this is a deception, because I have no way offhand of verifying whether that's true, so far as we know, this is the project and the site in question. So, the question becomes, and was not answered in that article, if it is their claim that showing work in math is inherently racist in some fashion, I was dying to know their rationale for coming to that conclusion. Not that I would necessarily or likely agree with it, but I wanted to know. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, Kyle. So what I'm planning to do in this is to go over their homepage a bit, and then they have about 5-ish lesson plans or documents attached to this website. I'll be going over the introductory materials to each of those just as an overview, and we can get sort of a general understanding of where they're coming from. And learn what we shall learn. So with that, let us dive right on in. This is called A Pathway to Equitable Math Instruction, Resources and Guidance to Support Black, Latinx, and Multilingual Students to Thrive in Grades 6 through 8. Already the implication that Black, Latinx, and multilingual students requires special attention. Now, the multilingual students part, I could believe if you're talking about somebody whose first language is not English. But what race and or ethnicity has to do in determining the necessities of extra help, I don't know. Let's find out. A Pathway to Equitable Math Instruction is an integrated approach to mathematics that centers Black, Latinx, and multilingual students in grades 6 through 8, addresses barriers to math equity, and aligns instruction to grade-level priority standards. The Pathway, sounds slightly religious, offers guidance and resources for educators to use now as they plan their curriculum, while also offering opportunities for ongoing self-reflection. Offering opportunities for ongoing self-reflection as they seek to develop an anti-racist math practice. The toolkit strides serve as multiple on-ramps for educators as they navigate the individual and collective journey from equity to anti-racism. Wow. Okay. Now, just as a note, I have not read through any of this. I am finding all of this out at the same time you are. So this is based around anti-racism. Now, for those of you that may not know what anti-racism is, and I got this straight from the main author of the well, not even the main author, the author of the book How to Be Anti-Racist, Ibram X. Kendi, who said that racism, or I should say, saying you are not racist is denial. Anti-racism is confession, because racism is a universal constant. It is effectively the original sin of all people, most especially white people. So to be anti-racist is to just admit that you're racist, but trying to defeat racism somehow. I don't quite understand it to this point. I don't think anyone really does. Thank you, Pecoraro Driving 8 Man. Just the synopsis of this makes this sound racist. Yeah, doesn't it, though? But let's proceed. All right, so then they proceed. The poverty of my vocabulary this morning, I apologize. Links to their various materials, a few of which I will have be pulling up here shortly. But let's go over them real quick. Stride, the 5 strides on the path to math equity. Stride 1, dismantling racism in mathematics instruction. Exercises for educators to reflect on their own biases to transform their instructional practice. Stride number 2, fostering deep understanding. Methods for deepening content understanding and relevance through crafted math discussions. Stride number 3, creating conditions to thrive. Environments and practices that support students' social, emotional, and academic development. Stride number 4, connecting critical intersections, the interconnectedness of English language learning and the development of mathematical thinking. And lastly, stride number 5, sustaining equitable practice, coaching structures that support math educators in their ongoing centering of equity principles. Continuing onward through the homepage, stay informed, and you can, I guess, sign up for their mailing list. Deep dive sessions. Ooh, a pathway to equitable math instruction is an actionable toolkit designed to support equitable access to math standards for Black, Latinx, and multilingual students in grades 6 through 8. We invite school leaders, educators, and advocates to join us at these virtual opportunities to dive deeper into each of the toolkit strides. Oh, view recording. Uh-oh. I might have to turn this into a series. Oh boy. Vimeo, oh my. Well then, folks, I'm going to just stick to the written materials today, but this might turn into my regular Sunday series for the next little while if there are recordings of these sessions. Oh my. All right, so a preview of things to come. The About section. This toolkit was developed by a team of teachers, instructional coaches, researchers, professional development providers, and curriculum writers with expertise in mathematics education, English language development, and culturally responsive pedagogy. All right. See collaborator bios. All right, well, maybe I'll look at that after the fact. Recognizing the importance of helping educators to identify essential content for the 2020-2021 school year, our team used Student Achievement Partners' Instructional Priority Content in Mathematics as a foundational guide for sharpening our content focus for this toolkit. We also recognize that educators need support in shifting their instructional practices to provide meaningful access to priority content while ensuring that those practices are research and assets-based and culturally responsive. We drew upon the principles of the California English Learner Roadmap and the position statement of Todos, Mathematics for All, as key resources for the development of the tools. We also realize that the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on communities of color has exacerbated the historic and systemic inequities experienced by Black, Latinx, and multilingual students. We therefore embrace the responsibility to simultaneously create equitable access to quality math instruction for 6th through 8th graders in the 2022-2021 school year, while continuing to confront systemic racism and individual beliefs rooted in racism. Individual beliefs rooted in racism, like because of your skin color and or ethnicity, you require special attention to learn mathematics. Those kind of individual beliefs. Acknowledgements. We wish to thank our dedicated partners and collaborating organizations in this project. Wow, look at all. Wow. Association of California School Administrators, California Association for Bilingual Education, California Math Project, Californians Together, Irvine Math Project, dozens, or at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 24. 25. I can math. 25 different organizations. The legitimacy or credibility of either or all, I have absolutely no idea, but there you go for reference. The various organizations. And lastly, of course, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for their generous financial support of this project. How much that financial support constitutes, I have no idea, but they have credited them with support. So, with all that as introduction, let's take a look at stride number 1 and see what we can see about dismantling racism in mathematics instruction. Exercises for educators to reflect on their own biases to transform their instructional practice. Now, this thing is 82 pages long. I am not going to be going through the entire document. You can find a link to this organization's main page in the description below if you'd like to take a look at things yourself. I'm just going to go over maybe, I don't know, the first introductory paragraph or 3, maybe the first page, just to see what they have to say about things. This will be a summary, an overview, a Equitable Mathematics 101, if you will. All right, dismantling racism in mathematics instruction. This tool provides teachers an opportunity to examine their actions, beliefs, and values around teaching mathematics. The framework for deconstructing racism in mathematics offers essential characteristics of anti-racist math educators and critical approaches to dismantling white supremacy in math classrooms by visibilizing. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a moment, and I'm just going to issue this disclaimer because it's entirely possible. And I honestly hope it is true that this entire thing is a put on. Okay, because it has been the case in recent history where people have submitted what look like legitimately academic researched papers for peer review and so on as a hoax to see what would get through. This may be a Poe, or it may be absolutely real. I don't know. So, on the off chance that at some point in the future this is shown to be some sort of put on, which again, I really hope it is given what it's promoting. Just want to make that concession now. So if I have been fooled, I've been legitimately fooled. Thank you, Pecoraro, the Driving Ape Man. Will they miss the rains in Africa? Oh, Todos. Anyway, visibilizing. Sorry, let me back up slightly. Dismantling white supremacy in math classrooms by visibilizing the toxic characteristics of white supremacy culture. A reference to Jones and Oken 2001, Dismantling Racism 2016. Okay. With respect to math, building on the framework, teachers engage with critical praxis in order to shift their instructional beliefs and practice anti-racist math education. By centering anti-racism, we model how to be anti-racist math educators with accountability. All right, how to use this tool. While primarily for math educators, this text advocates for a collective approach to dismantling white supremacy. This school-wide approach ensures that anti-racist work is not left alone to one individual, i.e. math teacher or the director of equity, but to enlist the support and voice of all stakeholders in the school ecosystem. Number 1, teachers should use this workbook to self-reflect on individual practices in the classroom and identify next steps in their anti-racist journey as a math educator. Leaders and coaches should use this framework during observations and walkthroughs, annotating the behaviors and providing targeted feedback. Administrators should examine programs and policies and how white supremacy impacts student outcomes, e.g., tracking, course selection, intervention rosters. In addition, they can hold teachers accountable for completing the activities in this workbook. Oh boy. All right, what are the activities? All right, table of contents. I want to find the activities. Do we have the activities? How do I engage? Okay, well, like I say, we'll just go over some of the opening materials. Letter to the reader. All right. This workbook provides teachers an opportunity to examine their actions, beliefs, and values around teaching mathematics. Because mathematics, as you know, requires a belief system. The framework for deconstructing racism in mathematics offers essential characteristics of anti-racist math educators and critical approaches to dismantling white supremacy in math classrooms by visualizing the toxic characteristics of white supremacy culture. I thought it was visibilizing. Visualizing? That sounds more appropriate. I thought it was visibilizing. Building on this framework, blah, blah. I think we just read all that earlier. So let's see if we can find one of the... Oh, here we go. This is a quotation from something called Dismantling Racism. Okay. Quote, "We live in a toxic culture that affects us all. One dynamic of the culture is that we are discouraged from seeing it. One of our tasks is to learn to see our culture and how it teaches us to make normal that which is not and should never be normal." All right. Okay, here we go. Now this is starting to talk about the things I've seen in both the article we talked about on Lords of the Night the other night and in various other places. I have seen this kind of language before regarding mathematics. Okay, dismantling white supremacy in math classrooms. We see white supremacy culture show up in the mathematics classroom even as we carry out our professional responsibilities outlined in the California Standards for the Teaching Profession. Using CSTP as a framework, you left out a space there, just saying. We see white supremacy culture in the mathematics classroom can show up when. All right, so this is when you know that white supremacy culture has shown up in the classroom. All right. Example number 1. The focus is getting the right answer. I'll say that again. You know that white supremacy is in your math classroom when the focus is getting the right answer, with right being in quotation marks. Okay, next, independent practice is valued over teamwork or collaboration. Well, the goal is that you can effectively learn how to do this on your own. I mean, working together to learn how to do. Yeah, but independent thinking, I guess, is bad. I don't know. Next, real world math, in quotation marks, is valued over math in the real world. I have no idea what that means. Next, students are tracked, parentheses, into courses, pathways, and within the classroom. Tracked, like their progress, or I don't know. Next, participation structures reinforce dominant ways of being. This is my bewildered face. Next, teachers encultured in the USA teach mathematics the way they learned it. Well, sure. Expectations are not met. All right. Addressing mistakes. Teachers are teachers and students are learners. Are those all bad things? Okay, I'm skipping down slightly. Like I said, this isn't going to be a complete read through. The fourth section, planning, instruction, and designing learning experience for all students. Number one, good math teaching is considered an antidote for mathematical inequity for Black, Latinx, and multilingual students. Again, are we still on the if you do these things, therefore white supremacy? Rigor is expressed only in difficulty. I do, we do, you do is the format of the class. Well, that's kind of how a lot of math... Okay, so that method of teaching math is white supremacy? Okay, here we go, and the bottom here. Assessing students for learning. Okay, you know white supremacy is in your classroom when students are required to, quote, show their work. Grading practices are focused on lack of knowledge. Well, either lack of knowledge or lack of ability to comprehend, okay? And lastly, language acquisition is equated with mathematical proficiency? Well, what? Okay, well, if you have a student in your classroom whose first language is not English, and they don't get the concept because they can't understand what you're saying, are there classrooms or teachers that will mark a student down because they don't speak the language being spoken in the classroom, whatever it may be? Like, you got that wrong on your math test. How dare you? I'm giving you an F when you don't understand the language in which I'm teaching the class. Does that really happen? If that does happen, those teachers are jerks. And that might be somehow, oh, the authorities are coming for me. You hear the sirens? Okay. Now, this is the one that I'm most interested in based on the article we saw the other night on Lords of the Night. Students are required to show their work. Will this take me to that section if I click on it? Aha! It's magic! Ah! The cops, what do you want from me? Okay. I'll just read this one, then we'll move on to the next one, because this is really where the article the other night caught my brain. All right. How do I track what students know? Students are required to, quote, show their work, unquote. Number one, engage. White supremacy culture shows up in math classrooms when students are required to show their work. All right, here we go. Math teachers ask students to show work so that teachers know what students are thinking, but that centers the teacher's need to understand rather than student learning. What? That centers the teacher's need to understand rather than student learning. No, it centers the teacher's being able to acknowledge that the student understands the process. Well, I guess, yeah, understands the student's process, that they have learned, that they can demonstrate they understand or comprehend the lesson. Like, what? It becomes a crutch for teachers seeking to understand what students are thinking and less of a tool for students in learning how to process. Thus, requiring students to show their work reinforces worship of the written word as well as paternalism. What? Requiring students to show their work reinforces worship of the written word, and that's in italics for those of you listening at home, as well as paternalism, that word in italics. All right, well, this is just fundamentally nonsense, but let's see what their recommendations in contrast are. Instead, ask other questions that will demonstrate learning when it is not clear to you how students know the answer. Well, you see, here's the thing. If a student can show their process from equation through to solution, then the teacher doesn't have to guess. There's no mind reading involved because math is not really an opinion-based discipline. Okay, verbal example. All right. If you were working with a fellow mathematician who was absent this day, what might you tell them to help them learn it? I might show them the equation on the board and how step by step I reached the answer. Classroom activity, number talks where students have to engage with mental mathematics not limited to computations. Okay, just as another disclaimer, I have an English major. I am not a mathematics major. If there is terminology being used here that is just way over my head, but is understandable to those of you out there who have experience with mathematics, I apologize for my ignorance. However, this all sounds like nonsense gobbledygook to me. Next, professional development. As a department, solve complex problems without writing and share with each other about that process. So we're just supposed to verbalize math problems to each other, do them in our head without any kind of notation or otherwise, and then just verbalize how we got there. And that will make everything equitable. What happened to that multilingual aspect? Okay. Next subheading, offer a variety of ways to demonstrate thinking and knowledge. Okay. Verbal example, show your thinking with words, pictures, symbols. Wait. Verbal example, show your thinking with words, pictures, and symbols. You mean like symbols, I don't know, like numbers and mathematical symbols? Can I use a plus sign and an equal sign and, various numbers to show my thinking and knowledge? Really? Classroom activity. Have students create TikTok videos, silent films, or cartoons about mathematical concepts or procedures? You want to use classroom time to make TikTok videos to demonstrate mathematical concepts. Professional development. Practice with math colleagues how to answer mathematical problems without using words or numbers. This has to be a joke. This has got to be a joke. Okay, I really, really hope that myself and anybody else who's found this or written about it or whatever else, that we're all being trolled right now. I really do. Because if any of this nonsense is actually being somehow integrated into real classrooms to be taught to real children, I shudder to think of the ultimate result. Now, here's the exercise. Reflect. What am I currently doing in my classroom? Questions for consideration. When asking students to show their work, what are the reasons for this? To check to see if they have understood and comprehended the lesson. What are the myriad ways students can demonstrate their knowledge or understanding? By showing their work? We're talking about math here, not... Okay, what type of work is valued? What type of work is not valued? In the math classroom? Well, probably digging ditches is not particularly valued in the math classroom. That's not to say it doesn't have value. It just probably doesn't have value there. How can I incorporate anti-racist practices into my classroom? My goals for this academic school year is or are to successfully educate my students on the subject matter and show their progress through grading and testing. The anti-racist characteristics I want to work on this year are, refer to characteristics of anti-racist math educators. Oh boy. What are the characteristics of anti-racist math educators? Let's find out in a moment. Thank you, Pecoraro, Driving 8-Man. Chat is requesting to be committed to rubber rooms. Yes, I think I'm 3 steps there myself. Okay, what are the characteristics of anti-racist math educators? Okay, Okay, so if you're a true anti-racist math educator, design a culturally sustaining math space. Use culturally relevant anti-racist pedagogy, practices, and curriculum. What does that mean? I don't know. Cultivate mathematical identity so that everyone can see themselves as mathematicians. Cultivate mathematical identity. Adapt homework policies to fit the needs of students of color. Recognize and name the mathematical success of students of color and teach them to recognize successes in themselves and others. Intentionally integrate physical movement in math classes. So, what are we supposed to like do jumping jacks and count them out to learn our 1, 2, 3s? But I want to go back up slightly. Adapt homework policies to fit the needs of students of color. So once again, if you are any shade than white, you need some kind of special consideration for your education, because obviously your melanin count determines your ability and or capability and or difficulties with learning things. Center ethno-mathematics. Recognize the ways that communities of color engage in mathematics and problem solving in their everyday lives. Teach that mathematics can help solve problems affecting students' communities. Model the use of math as a solution to their immediate problems, needs, or desires. Identify and challenge the ways that math is used to uphold capitalist, imperialist, and racist views. Teach them value of math as both an abstract concept and as a useful everyday tool. That one by itself in isolation, I don't necessarily have a problem with. Expose students to examples of people who have used math as resistance. Provide learning opportunities that use math as resistance. Thank you, ex-Bubba Hotep. I remember for my calculus exam, there were only 4 questions. We had an hour to finish. No one did. Those 4 questions took me about 3 pages of work. Well, obviously your calculus teacher was a raging racist. Provide learning opportunities that use math as resistance. My brain's stuck on that one. Thank you again, ex-Bubba Hotep. Funny thing about that exam, the fire alarm went off during the middle of it and not a soul budged. That's dedication to white supremacy, I guess. So good for you. Okay, again, if you'd like to look at this stuff yourself, link to the main page is in the description of this video. Okay, I really do want to get to the other documents, but I'll just, if I can stop myself from going any further, I'm just going to read this last little section here in the secondary. Prepare students of color to close the gap in access to STEM fields. Teach students of color about the career and financial opportunities in math and STEM fields. Encourage them to disrupt the disproportionate push out of people of color in those fields. Invite leaders and innovators of color working in STEAM fields to meet your students. I wasn't aware there was a push to take mathematics students and push them into Gabe Newell's realm, but all right. Well, insert my question / challenge. Why does your melanin count determine a particular need of special attention for education? And if you believe that to be the case, again, who's the racist? Let's move on to stride number 2. Fostering deep understanding. Methods for deepening student conceptual understanding through orchestrated math discussions that build on and connect multiple strategies. I'm going to skip the intro stuff since I think I've probably covered it in the previous materials. Sturmadler says STEAM is STEM with arts. Okay, so that wasn't a mistake because, all right, I will accept that. I don't know. I don't keep up on all the various acronyms when it comes to people trying to describe things that have been around forever. All right. Equitable math discussions through student discourse. And thank you. This is Kyle. So let me get this straight. It's anti-racist to assume minorities can't do math, so we have to change the entirety of math as we teach it. It's no. It is, yes, it is. Anti-racism being the correct way of thinking. Yes, the correct way of thinking is to see any student who is not white as requiring a different style of education than white students, because mathematics is inherently difficult for non-white students, I guess. Okay. Introduction. Have you ever taught a lesson and then encountered students solving the presented problems in a different way? Okay. Do opposing student thoughts scare you or excite you? Is your first reaction to differing thoughts, tell me more, or let me show you? Okay, well, let me just back up a little bit and take that on its own. I have had it be the case, either as a student interacting with a teacher or observing others interacting with teachers, where a concept will be thrown out there, and then a student will say something to the effect of, is that like, and then we'll come up with a real world or otherwise, simile for that same concept. And if it aligns with what is being taught, more often than not, the teacher will either show how that, yes, that applies, and then go into, specifically how the lesson connects to the student's question or example, or they will correct and say no or sort of, and then, and that's not a bad way of learning, because if you can understand something with a personal anecdote or example and work it into something else, that's a perfectly reasonable way of trying to make a connection with students and the subject matter. That's why story problems are often used, because then you can sort of visualize a real world example. If you have 3 apples and you take away 2 apples, how many apples do you have left? That kind of thing. So all by itself, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with taking on a student's attempt to understand something that's abstract with something they can relate to. That's perfectly reasonable. But I'm not quite sure that that is what is being implicated here. So moving on. Purpose. The purpose of this tool is to highlight the diversity of students' thinking, misconceptions, alternative solutions, and connections, so any student, regardless of level, can contribute and gain equitable access to grade-level content. Students gain agency, voice, and deep content knowledge through carefully planned discussions. Teachers also build deep content knowledge, cultivate the flexibility to work with diverse students, and practice continuous improvement. This tool is meant to be used with all grade levels and content. It is used for planning the lesson, data collection during the lesson, as well as reflection after the lesson and for future planning. It is a cyclical, living practice of continuous improvement. Like the never-ending quest for redemption. All right, and then we have 3 columns: who, benefits, and how. All right, who, the student, benefits, gains equitable access to meaningful and engaging grade level content. How, represent all levels of student thought, initial thoughts, misconceptions, alternative solutions, connections. Okay. Benefits, gains agency and uses their voice. How, Center content understanding around student questions, diverse thinking, misconceptions, and alternative strategies. Okay, so again, taking that in isolation, you present, the math problem or the math concept to the students. And then you say, can you think of a time where you had to put things together or take things away or divide things or, whatever? And you get the students engaged in the subject matter with something they can relate to or something going on in the real world, like, I don't know, they might use an example from the current zeitgeist to get the students engaged. Like, if you take away this many members of NSYNC, how many members do you have left? And I know that's a pretty dated reference, but you know what I'm talking about. What are the kids interested in today? If you have a YouTube channel, you've got 17 subscribers, and then suddenly 5 subscribers unsubscribe, how many subscribers do you have left? Whatever. Sure. Okay. It's fine. Student builds deep content knowledge. How? Facilitate active sharing, discussion, and connections between different students' thinking. Okay. If I was to take all of that stuff right there and take it away from the anti-racist philosophy, I could see at its bare bones how it's perfectly reasonable advice for a teacher. I don't, which is honestly more insidious that something relatively reasonable is being presented wrapped in a blanket of effective racist thinking. Onward to the teacher. The teacher builds deep content knowledge. How? Intentional anticipating and sequencing potential student thinking to reach learning goals. Okay. Gains flexibility when confronted with diverse or unexpected thinking. How? Explore diverse student thinking through class discussion and questioning. Okay. Practices continuous improvement. Reflect before, during, and after the lesson to grapple with your own development needed for the content. Okay, again, if I was just to look at this without it being wrapped in this other stuff, I might say it sounds like reasonable advice or processes for teachers to students and vice versa. So, okay. Getting started. Huh. All right. And just skimming over this stuff, this all looks like sort of boilerplate sort of advice for math teachers, which might have saved them a whole lot of writing effort if they just had to copy and paste from other sources on what to do. Plan the activity, students. Okay. All right. This all looks like reasonable stuff. I don't see anything completely off base here. Okay, and that's a bunch of worksheet stuff. Okay, so this is the shortest of all of them. This is a 15-page thing. We've seen it all, mostly. If there's anything questionable, at least in my mind, short of the introduction to this, I don't really see it. It seems to be, again, reasonable advice, but predicated on some questionable philosophy. Now, the Stride 3 item that they have on their download, it's actually a zip file full of like worksheets and such, and I can't really show that here. So we're going to jump to Stride 4 now. Again, if you'd like to look at all the materials yourself, the link to the homepage is in the description. Connecting critical intersections. Oh, intersectionality, my favorite. The interconnectedness of English language learning and the development of mathematical thinking. All right. This tool was created to address the need for English learner supports in enhancing English proficiency, including language scaffolding, student talk, and clarifying their understandings of mathematical concepts. This tool seeks to assist teachers with classroom actionables in the form of scaffolding and supports that model equitable instructional practices for ELs and foster rigor to develop language and mathematical conceptual understanding. It specifically addresses considerations around educator biases and beliefs and the diversity that exists among ELs. These issues are key to their success in both developing academic English proficiency and deepening their understanding of the mathematical concepts that were not addressed adequately in prior learning experiences. So is this going to be an English language primer? Cultural and linguistic assets. I'm just going to skim over this stuff, guys, because, oh, here we go. Effects of systemic racism. The patterns of underachievement historically seen among students gaining proficiency in English, many of which are also students who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC, are effects of a system that fails to see the languages and cultures our students bring to their education as assets for their own learning. Their language and culture are neither seen as an important contribution to their learning communities nor to the rich diversity of America. The systems that uphold these white supremacist practices are most clearly seen in policies that devalue students' home languages and cultures and instead force assimilation through English-only initiatives and the abundant shower of white-only literature and learning materials. Further evidence is seen in the access English learners have to higher-level courses in junior high and high school, especially in the area of mathematics. This supported the decision to focus this tool on mathematics equity for English learners in grades 6 through 8. This may or may not sound like it's relevant for a moment, but when the Voyager probe was sent out into deep space, it had a collection of information encoded onto it in a golden record, along with pictograms and so on. But one of the main features, aside from images and sounds and such, was mathematics. Because mathematics, regardless of where you are or where you come from, is ultimately going to be a common language of understanding. Because so far as we know, the laws of physics and mathematics are consistent throughout the universe as we observe it. Now, if you have a student who does not speak the language being used to teach the material in the classroom, then yes, there's going to be a difficulty there. That has nothing to do with white supremacy. If I went to a school that spoke only or primarily Spanish, and I didn't speak Spanish, it wouldn't be a matter of brown supremacy preventing me from learning math. It would be a language barrier. So I'm just on its face, I am not sure what it is they're trying to say by this is a system of white supremacy, because there are different languages. And if you come to a school where you either do not speak or cannot very well speak the predominant language, that somehow that is a racist tool. At least inherently, don't get me wrong, I understand that there has been some very wacky and terrible efforts towards assimilation in different countries and different cultures over history. But in the modern day, with this being the argument that simply having a language barrier equates to a racist intent, I don't buy it. The Todos position paper, The Movement to Prioritize Anti-Racist Mathematics, Planning for This and Every School Year, explains, quote, an anti-racist position in mathematics education is a pledge to dismantle systems and structures that maintain racism within teaching and learning mathematics, from challenging belief systems that perpetuate microaggressions to disrupting the role mathematics classes play in pushing students out of schooling. If we truly believe that we are moving towards assess-based views of students, we must expand our understanding of what it means to be good at mathematics, make space for alternative ways of knowing and doing mathematics based in the community, and acknowledge the brilliance, both in mathematics and beyond, of BIPOC in our classrooms. We must be explicitly anti-racist, unquote. This document was created to address the lack of language scaffolding used to nurture opportunities for students gaining proficiency in English, share their thinking, and clarify their understanding of mathematical concepts. The tool in this document seeks to support teachers with classroom actionables that model equitably instructional practices for ELs. This document specifically addresses considerations around educator biases and beliefs, as well as the variabilities that exist among English learners, as these issues are key to EL's success in developing academic English proficiency while gaining the mathematical concepts that were not gained by past practices. Because our practice is the most perfect practice, I guess. Our tool will support teachers with examples of actionables that support rigor, as well as scaffolds and supports for simultaneous development of language and math content in order to support equitable practices for ELs in mathematics. My brain is melting as I'm reading this. I really do believe that. Okay. I'm going to stop myself after this last section, and then we'll go on to the fifth and final stride in the series and look at the overview of that. Teacher biases and beliefs. The impact that teachers' beliefs have on equitable practices cannot be understated. In her paper titled Teachers' Knowledge and Beliefs About English Learners and Their Impact on STEM Learning, Julie Bianchini, I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce that correctly, explains that teachers, quote, efforts to construct safe classroom communities and effectively implement reform-based strategies have been found to impact both EL's views of themselves as learners and their mathematics and science achievement, unquote. Her review of research on the topic of teacher beliefs highlighted the connections across teachers' knowledge and beliefs, their instructional practices, and the implications for EL student learning. One such connection was the deficit-based views teachers had in regards to the EL students they service. One example of this view, One example of this view is seen when teachers do not implement practices that develop students' language acquisition, and teachers confuse emerging English language proficiency with the absence of STEM content understanding. Really? A rational person sees a kid who does not have a grasp of the English language as correlating with an absence of mathematical knowledge or understanding? Also, and I hate to bring this up, aside from encouragement and otherwise, is it really the math teacher's responsibility to teach the students English who do not already have a grasp of English? I mean, obviously practice it and coach them on terms they may not understand, but aren't there specific classrooms and teachers where you learn English? You know, ESL classes, things like that. I know we're all into this together when you're in a school, but all the same. Okay. Teachers often assume, do they, ELs as lacking relevant prior knowledge, experiences, and/or language, when in fact, in the early stages of second language acquisition, learners spend time in the quiet phase as they take in and process their understanding of their second language. One deficit-based view shared by teachers was seeing ELs as being unable or unwilling to communicate with teachers and/or with their non-EL peers. Okay, well, again, like, you know, there's always that example. You meet somebody on the street, they're talking in a language you don't understand, and you raise your voice and just speak English louder or something at them like they're stupid, when by all rights, you might be talking to a physics expert. You know, not understanding a language does not make you dumb or something, or incapable of learning or whatever. But apparently, according to this tool, the assumption is most teachers think kids that don't speak English are inherently mentally deficient or something, or cognitively challenged. If you're approaching with that assumption about all teachers, okay, I'm going to move on from this again. is a 101 course and whatever this nonsense is. So let's go to the last stride. And then after this, I might look at one other thing, and then we will wrap up. Sustaining equitable practice. Coaching structures that support math educators in their ongoing centering of equity principles. This tool is a framework designed to support instructional coaches, administrators, or lead teachers who are seeking guidance on an approach to coaching that addresses equity issues in the math classroom. It focuses on developing cultural competence, emotional intelligence of both teachers and students, and the knowledge and skill building of teaching. This guide and its categories are inspired by Zaretta Hammond's book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, as well as Elena Aguilar's article, Mind the Gap. By interweaving these two frameworks and directing coaches to the resources that support the intersections of these ideas, we offer multiple pathways so that educators can embrace math equity professional coaching in a way that best meets their needs in alignment to the appropriate area for teacher development and/or department or school-wide goals. This guide can be considered a curated choose-your-own-adventure launching point for the work of coaching for math equity. Okay, coaching structures for math equity. What is coaching for equity? Okay. Before embarking on the use of this tool, it is important to clarify what coaching for equity is and what it is not. All right, I love definitions. Do tell. Coaching for equity. And just as a precursor, my understanding of the word equity in this context always ends up being equality of outcome. All right. Coaching for equality of outcome is focused on transforming mathematics education. You don't say. The COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent disruptions to schooling have laid bare pre-existing inequities and systemic barriers to ensuring that every student has a meaningful opportunity to excel in mathematics. Inequitable opportunities and outcomes have been particularly apparent for students gaining English proficiency and BIPOC students. Consequently, coaching for math equity focuses on building and sustaining a lasting framework to prioritize anti-racist mathematics, the meaning of which is explained by Todos in The Movement to Prioritize Anti-Racist Mathematics. Dare I go deeper into the rabbit hole? The Movement to Prioritize Anti-Racist Mathematics, planning for this in every school year. Our current movement. Dubbed Crisis Teaching, Distance Learning, Emergency Instruction, we have come to know the last few months of the 2019 to 2020 school year by many names. The current health pandemic has brought new equity considerations to the fore, such as lack of access to online learning, challenges to teaching multilingual/EL students online, and the sudden halt of services usually provided by individual education plans. However, it has most successfully brought entrenched inequities that existed prior to the school closures into sharp focus. Wealthy families were more prepared and more protected under shelter-in-place orders, while low-income families, mostly Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC, continue to risk their lives as essential workers whose jobs cannot be completed from home. Without access to necessary services provided through school, some parents of students with IEPs saw their child's education suddenly halt, while teachers of these students dealt with the pain of the sudden loss of in-person connections with their students. The mental and physical burden of the COVID-19 pandemic has landed on the communities who were most in need of resources prior to the pandemic. We began writing our position statement in response to concerns about the lack of attention to equity considerations that we saw as schools prepared for long-term closures. Maybe I'm being cynical, but it seems more to me you use the advent of the crisis of the pandemic to push your ideological beliefs. Maybe I am being cynical. However, we found we could not respond to the current health pandemic of COVID-19 without also considering its predecessor, racism. And the reference is Kendi 2020. Racism, the pandemic, as told to us by Ibram X. Kendi. As we write this statement, hoping to reflect and prepare for the next school year, we are in pain and angered by the continued racial violence, the murder of black and brown people by police, and the continued state-sanctioned violence against protesters. We are mathematics educators. We cannot look away or claim a privileged stance because we might prefer to believe mathematics is a culturally or politically neutral subject. Well, by all means, tell me of the politics of math. Tell me what political position 1 + 1 = 2 projects. All levels of teaching mathematics are imbued with the same racism and violence that permeates all schooling. To quote our Todos president Linda Fulmore in her message from June 2nd, 2020, quote, "We can no longer believe that a focus on curriculum, instruction, and assessment alone will be enough to prepare our children for survival in the world. We need anti-racist conversations for ourselves and for our children," unquote. In light of reverberations through the education world, In light of reverberations through the education world due to the myriad of issues spurred on by the twin pandemics of racism and COVID-19, we reassert our guiding principles and pledge ourselves anew to social justice and mathematics education. Our position is to prioritize anti-racist mathematics education for all students as we prepare to return to school this fall and the years to come. An anti-racist position in mathematics education is a pledge to dismantle systems and structures that maintain racism within teaching and learning mathematics, from challenging belief systems that perpetuate microaggressions to disrupting the role mathematics classes play in pushing students out of schooling. We pledge to more thoroughly develop and lead the way with frameworks for anti-racist mathematics classrooms. The only people I see here pushing a political or ideological lens onto mathematics is you. This is only a 7-page document. I'll just read the headers of each section before I wrap up, because I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. 1, eliminating deficit views of mathematics learning. 2, eradicating mathematics as a gatekeeper. 3, engaging the socio-political turn of mathematics education. 4, elevating the professional learning of mathematics teachers and leaders with a dual focus on mathematics and social justice. And that's the end of it there. All right, well, I had no idea where this would take us. There are far more additional rabbit holes to go down, especially the recordings of the videos or lessons, apparently, that are available on that website, which I am hesitantly considering covering in future live streams. Thank you. This is Kyle. Scribe, don't you know? The politics of math is white supremacy. Jesus, this stuff is actually going to be taught in schools, isn't it? Going to? It is. If you need any, well, okay, let me pull back a little bit. Wisps of this kind of thinking have already entered mainline education. And sometimes not even wisps, but direct quotations. In my cursory, and I have to stress cursory, knowledge of these evolutions of educational thinking, it seems to focus more intently on private schools, independent schools, those schools that are not regulated by federal law. But do not doubt, because there's no reason to, that it is being pushed in public schools. I have seen many examples in my Curriculum of Fear series and several TEDx talks dealing with education, where this stuff is being pushed and promoted by public educators. So it's not a going to, it is. Now, it's taken on a new focus. It's taken on a new catchphrase with anti-racism. That is the new watchword for what encapsulates all of this kind of stuff. It's very catchy phrase, anti-racism. Shorthand for things that have been pushed forever. If you go back to my first Curriculum of Fear video, where you have a group of teachers discussing their strategies for bringing social justice into the classroom, anti-racism is effectively no different than social justice. It's just, 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other. It's just the new fancy way of saying it. It's the new pseudo-academic way of saying it, because there are books out there written by people that have doctor in front of their name and research institutes behind them that make it seem legitimate as a way of thinking about the world and a way of assessing other people. So, not sure that is the most clean way to end a live stream on this subject, because again, I was just sort of going over everything and now we went down the rabbit hole slightly. But if you would like to learn more about this, the link to the website for the Pathway to Equitable Mathematics Teaching, or whatever it's called, is in the description below. I'll take a couple minutes if you guys have any other comments or questions of your own. Not that I'll be able to answer any about this, but I guess the question I have for you is, would you be interested in me doing a series, if I can get those videos, on this subject further? Because I'm totally for it if you guys are interested in it. So let me know in the comments. Let's see, just looking up a little bit. Snow Pilot, they're pushing this now because math and engineering were the last two holdouts against the woke crowd. Well, math and engineering are, and science in general, not necessarily in totality, but, hard math, hard sciences are the hardest nuts to crack with this kind of thinking, because they defy political or ideological influence. Short of things like Common Core and philosophies on how to teach it, injecting these things with politics or activist thinking it's like, throwing spitwads against a brick wall. Math is just math. There's no politics in 1 + 1 = 2. But then you could also, of course, cite the 1984 example of 2 + 2 = 5, because we say so. And that seems to be where, in spirit, this is attempting to go. If you tell me that math, which has no political attribution, it is true whether it's done here or in a country that's communist, or a country that's socialist, or a country that's capitalist, or a country, whatever, 1 + 1 = 2 is the same here and on Mars. But if you tell me that math is racist, and I have no choice but to believe math is racist, then I suppose you can crack that nut. Magister says, go for it. I'm looking forward to the cerebral hemorrhage. Yeah, well, we'll see. Lexi Mads, yes, please, to the videos, etc. I need to see this shit in action. All right. Chad Morrison says, yes. No one nowhere. They've already sent the 8 categories of whiteness to some parents. Yes, we talked about that last night on Lords of the Night near the end. Bering did a video on that chart. And apparently it was something actually sent to parents or teachers, I forget what it was, from some school. I don't know the background of the story. Look up Bering's channel on YouTube. He did a video on it the other day. Let's see. Midnight in Exile. Notice how everything is a community with these people. Yeah, also how math is inherently capitalistic and so on, and has to be used as resistance and so on. Yeah, there's a lot of very familiar language put here. Ball bearing, 1 + 1 might not be political, but according to blue check marks, 2 + 2 = 4 is white supremacy. Yeah. And, 2 + 2 = 5 is actually true to some people. Killer Turnus, God help me, I must be suicidal. Do it. Do it. Embrace the dark side of the Force. Yeah. Tony Klein, new to the channel, but I'd watch the series. How does all the equity work with special needs students? I don't know, but I mean, according to the philosophy presented here, the majority of teachers see any student whose language is not firstly English as a special needs student. And in fact, it's promoting the idea that anyone who has a skin color that isn't white is inherently a special needs student, even if they're not English as a second language. You have to prepare special methods of teaching math if the student happens to be not white, because they're inherently different human beings because of their skin color. Their brains work differently because of their skin color. I seem to remember such notions being pushed, I don't know, by certain organizations that promoted certain supremacist ideals from history going backward. I mean, to me, all of this just reads like, let's fight fire with fire. We want to end systemic racism. So here we present to you a system for assessing students on the basis of skin color as to their ability to learn. I don't know that I can distill the mental contradiction of what I'm reading more simply than that. But with that, everyone, I'm going to call it here. Next Sunday, I will attempt to do a follow-up episode where I will try to cover one of the videos presented by this organization, or I should say the original organization, not the one on screen now. And we will see what we can see. This has been disturbing, if not enlightening. And just keep an ear open as time goes on about the word anti-racism in education and elsewhere in life. It is the new buzzword of choice, and I'm seeing it more and more. And most disturbingly, perhaps, in education, in teaching children. Because, when it comes to indoctrination, the best strategy is to get them while they are young. Anyway, everyone, thank you for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is always so well behaved. You have very little to do. Everyone who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. If you'd like to hear more from me or Satsu 2 Cents, you can find the both of us tomorrow night, Monday night, on Satsu 2 Cents' channel for The Lords of the Night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where we will go over the news of the day, news stories that you submit, what we've been up to on the internet, and then your questions and comments. Everyone, again, hope you're all having a good Sunday. Hope you are all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And if you're not warm, please, I hope warmth finds you, and quickly. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.